it's a lot bigger than Brexit. It's a lot bigger than Matteo Salvini, who we talked about on this channel as well. It's a lot bigger than a lot of grassroots movements that I have ever seen. And this particular movement that I'm talking about is happening in Brazil. You may have seen some of the videos that I've done about Bolsonaro already. This is huge. I encourage other American YouTubers to start talking about Bolsonaro, because in this hemisphere we should be propping up more right-wing candidates. We should be propping up more conservative candidates, because a lot of the countries that we have in this hemisphere, unfortunately, are socialist, quasi-communist countries. Now I'm going to show you this clip here. This is what happened when Bolsonaro walked out of an airport, and this is one of his smaller crowds that he's drawn. This is exactly what happened when he came out of the airport and how the people reacted. Now, here's why I think everyone who is living in Brazil should absolutely vote for Bolsonaro in the upcoming elections. Now, I'm probably going to offend some of you living in Brazil who watch this channel. I'm probably going to offend some Brazilians here in America who watch this channel, but I have to be completely honest with you. Your country is a shithole. How much good has come from electing left-wing socialist politicians in the past? How much good has come from your socialized medical care? How much good has come from your socialized schools? How much good has come from your socialist policies and the Marxist doctrine that has been injected into your society in Brazil? How much good has come from that, Brazil? Your country is crap. And yet, you want to go on and keep electing left-wing politicians. You want to just keep continuing down the same path that you have been on for years and years and years. You know that that is the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. That is, in fact, the definition of insanity. How much good has come from outlawing private gun ownership? The shootings and gun crime in Brazil is way, way more than here in America, and guns are legal here. We have 300 million guns here in America. We have more guns here than you have people in your country, and we don't even come near the amount of gun crime that happens in your country. How well has having guns outlawed for private ownership done in Brazil? How well has it gone? Why do you keep doing the same exact thing? You need someone in there who's a conservative. You need someone in there with right-wing views. You need someone in there who's going to privatize your society in Brazil, because you need competition. Competition always increases quality. Always, without a doubt, every single time. And yet you keep voting for socialism. You keep teaching Marxism in your schools, and you keep chasing communism in your country, and you think you're going to have a great country. In a country of over 200 million people, you want to keep introducing these socialist policies, thinking that it's going to turn out well for you. You almost have the size of the population that the USA has, and you keep wanting to vote for socialists. You keep wanting to vote for corrupt left-wing politicians. It's utter ridiculousness. It's utter stupidity. It shows that the majority of Brazil have low IQs. The majority of the people in Brazil have low IQs to keep electing left-wing politicians thinking your country is going to be better. It's not. It's going to go to shit. And this is the last chance that you have to save your country, and yet You want to listen to your mainstream media. Your mainstream media who's talking about Bolsonaro the same way our mainstream media did about Trump. The same way the Italian mainstream media talked about Matteo Salvini. The same way the British mainstream media talked about Brexit. Did any of those work? None of them worked. Not one. All of the right-wing populists won. All of the conservative populists won. And now we need Bolsonaro. Competition will increase the quality of your country. Privatization will increase the quality of your country. Look what we're doing here. Everyone around the world, including from Brazil, tries to get to my country. They don't try to get to your country. Is it because your politicians are doing so great, your left-wing politicians that you've been electing for decades upon decades upon decades, thinking that it's going to work this time? Socialism is going to work this time. It wasn't real socialism. Yeah, look how well that's working out for Venezuela. Look how well that's working out for some of these other socialist countries. Yeah, it's so great. So great. Socialism is awesome. And we have to elect another socialist. We have to elect the same old corrupt candidate that we've been electing for years upon years upon years. Here's the reason why your government's corrupt. It's because it's so big. It's so ballooned. When your government gets to a certain point, a certain size, it corrupts. Every single time. We have a saying here in America. It says, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Every single time it's true. And when you have so much socialization, when you have so many things that are socialized within your country, your government gets to a certain size to where it's going to corrupt every single time. You can't give the power to your government. You have to take the power back from your government. You have to shrink your government, and you have to privatize everything. You have to create competition. Think about it like this. I use this example on my channel sometimes. Your iPhone. Do you think your iPhone would be so good if Apple didn't have competition, if they didn't compete with Samsung, if they didn't compete with all of these other telephone companies? Do you think that their phones would be great? Do you think that we'd have flat screen TVs right now if you didn't have other companies who manufacture televisions, create other types of televisions trying to be better than the next person? No, we wouldn't have flat screens right now. Our TVs would still be this thick. If the government produced TVs, if the government produced iPhones, if the government controlled means of production, or you have all this socialization within a society. This is the reason why America's so great. It's because we have so much privatization. It's because we have so much competition here. Now, granted, some things are wrong, like we have crony capitalism here. Completely bad. You have to put nationalism first. When you put nationalism first, crony capitalism can't thrive. You can't have corporations trying to flood our borders with 1 million immigrants annually who are going to work for $4 or $5 less an hour and under the table for cash here and drive down the wages of American citizens. If we had nationalism here, which we're trying to strive to get, first, those things, crony capitalism, couldn't thrive. Now, granted, also, our healthcare isn't that great. It needs some work. But socialized healthcare paid for by the American taxpayer so that we can all be taxed at a 50% rate, while our population is projected to be about 450 million within the next 20 years, made up of mostly people living off welfare coming from south of our border. Socialized medicine probably, definitely isn't the answer. We can fix these things with a little bit more competition and nationalism. But I will say this. Everyone from around the world, including from Brazil, comes here to try to get surgeries and health care. Even the people in Canada, the grand example that the socialists use, people from Canada come down here to get simple surgeries all the time because they're sick of waiting for, getting a kneecap replaced or something like that, some simple surgery like that. This is the direction that you have to go, Brazil. You have to go in a different direction. You can't keep going left because you're going to end up with, like Venezuela. You have Venezuelans pouring into your border right now. How well do you think that's going to go over? Probably not going to go over too well for you guys. So you have to think at a nationalistic point of view. You have to think from a conservative point of view. Your country is a shithole, and it's just getting shittier by the day. You should have one of the richest countries in the world. Look at all of these natural resources that you have. It's just like Africa. Look at all the natural resources that continent has. You guys should be You guys should be probably one of the richest countries in the world if you didn't have such corrupt politicians and so much socialism and Marxism going on in your country. Marxism has completely infected your society. Look at this clip here. I want to show you guys this clip here of this teacher yelling at this student, calling Bolsonaro Hitler. This is the type of things that we saw before Trump's election and actually after Trump's election, where some teachers would call him Hitler, racist, all these different things. It's the same thing happening in Brazil, and this is like the video that I created. Most of you probably remember. I'll show you guys this clip in a minute, where I talked to this Chinese woman who lived through the Cultural Revolution in China, who talked about how their whole tactic was using children and calling people racist, sexist, homophobic, and things like that. I encourage Brazilians, because it appears that you might not know of these things, to look up cultural Marxism on YouTube and find out where that originates from. But check out this teacher here.
Nesse país, levei porrada nas costas, levei gás outro dia, várias vezes, pra ter democracia nessa merda, e essa porra falando desse merda do Bolsonaro, o cara que é homofóbico, não gosta de pobre, não gosta de negro. Pega aí, meia que era Hitler na Alemanha. Esse cara é um Hitlerzinho.
So that's cultural Marxism at its finest. That is cultural Marxism at its finest. Calling Bolsonaro racist, calling Bolsonaro Hitler, this is the exact same thing that they tried with Trump. It's the exact same thing that they tried with Matteo Salvini and all these other populist candidates. And by the way, I learned a few things while talking to some Brazilian people online. Populism, the word populism means left wing in Brazil. I don't know why. Here it just means someone for the ordinary people, someone that uses populism, grassroots campaigns, because that's what Bolsonaro is doing. His whole movement is based off of alternative media. The mainstream media absolutely hates him, including the American mainstream media, apparently. If you look at this article out of Bloomberg here, says Bolsonaro says black Brazilians aren't owed anything over slavery. Now, I looked this up. I looked on the Brazilian paper called the Folha de São Paulo, and I read about the quotes that he said, and basically he's against affirmative action in Brazil. Why in the hell does Brazil have affirmative action? Aren't the Afro-Brazilians almost more than the white Brazilians there? You know, we're trying to fight affirmative action here with a 13% black population here because it's completely racist against whites, affirmative action. I mean, you have black students who get into medical school with lower grade percentage averages, with lower GPAs, than white students. They get in easier, they accept them more often, and they're undercutting all of the Asian students, who Asians, we all know, have one of the highest IQs of the different races. They're undercutting Asian students getting into medical school, and now Asians are protesting against affirmative action here. Why does Brazil have affirmative action? Do you ever wonder that, Brazil? Why do you have black activists who are able to march, but then if you had anyone who was a white activist who was for activism for Portuguese or Italian people in Brazil, for half of your population essentially, then they would be called racist, right? Does that seem stupid to you? It seems stupid to me. And another thing I learned is that they don't really racially separate their politics like we do here. Obviously, here in America, we separate by vote. We separate, we have all these just different statistics by crime, who commits the most crime, and things like that. A lot of my videos are based off of that. I'm going to create a whole section for race realism coming up here soon. So we do that. They don't really do that. I kind of learned that they don't really separate their votes. They don't have any statistics for crime based on race. They don't have any statistics for voting based on race whatsoever. They don't really separate their politics based on race. But I mean, that one question there, why do you have affirmative action? And why is it okay for black activists to march for affirmative action, literally having white students getting kicked out of universities because those seats are reserved for black students, when Afro-Brazilians are almost the same population, or even approaching more than white Brazilians are? That makes absolutely no sense to me. Why would you allow that to happen? Of course Bolsonaro should end affirmative action. It's ridiculous. It's racist against Portuguese. It's racist against the Italians, and it's racist against the German population that you have there in Brazil. It's ridiculous. Affirmative action should not exist. And his quote about not owing black Brazilians aren't owed anything over slavery, he's completely right on this, if he said it. I don't know. People are saying sometimes that he doesn't say some of these quotes that are attributed to him. But if he did say it, where's the lie? It's completely right. If you want to talk about who wants to pay the black Brazilians there, why don't you go to the population of 12 million Arabs that you have in your country and ask them to pay the reparations to the black Brazilians? Have you Brazilians ever heard of the Arab slave trade? It went on for centuries, more than the transatlantic slave trade did. Went on for way longer than the Portuguese were trading and selling slaves. And by the way, it's still going on right now in Libya. And are you going to go to your 12 million Arab population, your Muslim population, and ask for reparations? Tell them to pay for the black slaves. And he says the black slave owners sold them into slavery. Well, that's true. They did sell them into slavery. And the Jewish bankers own the slave ships. So why don't we go after the Jews too now? I mean, this is ridiculous. Hundreds of years later, we're still talking about who's more of a victim, even in Brazil. And this is why I say Marxism is worldwide. It's all over the place right now. But it's especially in countries with high percentages of European populations. And there's a reason for that, guys. All the Brazilians who don't touch on racial politics or any of these different things, don't know much about cultural Marxism, I encourage you to go on YouTube and study up on cultural Marxism and where that comes from. You'll be better off for it, trust me. Another thing I learned is apparently Bolsonaro did not say that he would rather have his son be dead than be gay. Honestly, I wish he did, because it's funny. And I laughed when I thought that he said it. So now I'm a little bit disappointed that he didn't say it. But he did say that he wished Pinochet killed more people. And I agree. We love Pinochet. So anyway, Brazil, vote for Bolsonaro, because your country is a shithole.